What do you think when I say Wolverine? You might think of the horrible Fox X-Men movies, or X-Men 97's creator literally trying to make Wolverine gay, or the fact that he's become a really generic comic character in recent years. Well, he actually wasn't always like that. In 1982, the first Wolverine solo miniseries was released, and it may be one of the most underrated superhero comics of all time. To fully understand how good this comic is, first you have to look at how Wolverine was portrayed before this solo story. I haven't read all the Uncanny X-Men comics, but from what I have read, Wolverine is the team hothead who occasionally went berserk, kicked ass, and said some awesome one-liners. Hell, we didn't even know his name was Logan for a good while. And by the way, it is Logan, not James Howlett, because that's some idiotic retcon from a terrible story. Anyways, Wolverine was a pretty kick-ass character before this story, and somehow he got better. Not only was his character cool, but I personally believe that he has one of the most unique superhero designs in comics. And this was only accentuated when genius Frank Miller, in his prime, was brought in to draw this solo story. According to Chris Claremont, when he pitched the idea of drawing a Wolverine story to Frank Miller, at first, Frank Miller actually wasn't interested. It was only after a couple of hours of talking with Claremont that Miller realized how this story would really handle Wolverine. Chris Claremont had a vision to transform Wolverine massively, and not in the way that Denny O'Neil did with The Question, where you ruin a character and take away everything likable about them. Instead, he aimed to turn Wolverine from an unstable berserker into more of a hard-boiled noir detective, and in his words, a failed samurai. You might be thinking, what did he mean by failed samurai? Well, Logan as a character strives for honor and grace in battle, like a samurai, but because of his nature, inevitably becomes an uncontrollable animal. That theme continues throughout the entire comic, because this isn't like every other comic that was out at the time. This is a really different story that no one else was doing. So you see, this is where I kind of have a problem. I've seen some people brushing this under the rug, flippantly saying, isn't that weird comic where Wolverine just goes to Japan? This 4-issue miniseries isn't just Wolverine goes to Japan. It actually differentiates Wolverine from every other hero. This isn't your regular superhero or vigilante story. For example, Chris Claremont once compared Frank Miller's writing capabilities to Dashiell Hammett, and I don't know how much say Frank Miller had in the story of this comic, but it truly does read like a pulp noir mystery. Not only is this comic filled with masterful film noir visuals and tone, it's also a full-blown samurai tale of honor and revenge. Now, when I call this underrated, I know that people do give this story credit, but it's never as highly regarded as Year One or Daredevil. And while I do understand that those comics are legendary and literally perfect, and don't get me wrong, Wolverine isn't perfect, it still has some small issues here and there, but personally, I believe this story should be up there with those legendary comics. This defined Wolverine and set him apart from Batman, Spider-Man, Daredevil, and every other hero. Yes, Daredevil did have the world and the character traits of film noir, but there was a limit because Daredevil was still a good-hearted hero. Wolverine, on the other hand, heavily drinks, smokes, gets into bar fights, and most importantly, doesn't have a no-kill rule. You ever get annoyed reading a Batman comic and he refuses to put somebody down who deserves it? Well, Wolverine is the solution. This is probably my favorite ever portrayal of Logan because of A, the magnificent art by Frank Miller, and B, the depth of the storytelling that shows how unique the character is. Everything in this story would lay the groundwork for every version of Wolverine to come after. If you see anything with Wolverine now, he's usually sitting at a bar waiting for somebody to pick a fight, and that's because of this comic. This is the definitive Wolverine in every way. I know the blue and yellow suit was his original look, but I think that the brown and tan is better, and also, you can't deny it looks insanely badass. The Japan we see in this story is a breath of fresh air as well. It's not just your usual Gotham or New York City setting like we see in every other comic. We see ancient Japanese temples where Logan's true love Mariko and her evil father Lord Shinjin resides. And Mariko is actually a well-written character and isn't just a girl boss like every other character nowadays. But we also get the dark neon cityscape of Tokyo as well. The adaptation of this comic, The Wolverine, got every single thing wrong. The Japan of Wolverine's world is not a well-lit modern Japan. It's more of a neon cesspool of crime in which Logan must wearily navigate. Not whatever the hell that movie was trying to do. Anyways, speaking of the no-kill rule, you're probably just thinking that Logan wastes a few common criminals here and there. Spoiler warning, that means you should go read the comic right now. That is not the case with this comic. In this story, Wolverine faces the Hand, a crimson-clad army of ninjas who you might have seen Daredevil come up against. But the way that Wolverine handles them in this comic is a whole new level of badass. All throughout the story, we've seen Wolverine destroying waves of these guys in these visceral fight scenes complemented by Claremont's iconic narration. But it's not until the very end where Logan realizes that he must face off with Lord Shingen, thus destroying his entire relationship with Mariko, where we get one of the most kick-ass things I've ever seen. Logan lights up a cigar, gears up with crossbows and shurikens, and prepares to go to war. Now this sequence might be brought down a tiny bit because of the shifting perspective, but it's still amazing. We see Lord Shingen losing contact from all the posts defending his temple. All of the radios have gone silent. I wonder why that is. Oh yeah, it's because Wolverine went Rambo and brutally slaughtered every ninja who ever existed. But that's just the calm before the storm. That is the epic final samurai duel. One of the best fight scenes in a comic, ending with Wolverine getting his revenge, reclaiming his honor, and marrying Mariko. Frank Miller has once said that with Sin City, he tried to create a hybrid of American/British comics and manga. A solution to modern comics having gayness and horrible writing doesn't exactly have to be manga. It's not like manga is terrible or anything. Just like anime, the older stuff from the 80s and 90s actually looks good. I have read a bit of Vagabond, which I thought was pretty cool, but it's comics like Wolverine that mix the American film noir style with the somber art-based storytelling of manga. So basically what I'm trying to say is if you don't like modern comics, you don't have to go and pick up a big load of manga. Just go back and read old X-Men, old Wolverine, Daredevil, Batman, Spider-Man. There's way more options than you actually think. And once again, this does prove that Marvel is better than DC. Whilst DC was making comics about global warming and racism, Marvel was putting out comics like this that read like an old Dashiell Hammett pulp, but also like an epic samurai tale of vengeance. So Wolverine by Chris Claremont and Frank Miller is a masterpiece and the perfect example of how to change a character for the better. Oh yeah, and one last thing you need to remember. He's not some 6'2" pretty boy like Hugh Jackman. He's definitely not some guy who hangs around with non-binary freaks like X-Men 97. Wolverine is the best there is at what he does, but what he does best isn't very nice.
You gotta ask yourself, do I feel lucky?